Hey guys, so I am doing something a little bit different today. I want to talk about the Endor raid, which raids are not my forte, but I figured this would be a really good way for you guys to see just kind of how approachable this raid is and what you can do, what teams you can use to get to over 14 million points with, in my opinion, very little investment. So I'm not going to call it a guide though, because there are a ton of things that I am probably doing wrong, to be completely honest with you. But I do want to show you how I'm getting to this score, why I'm using specific teams, etc., so that you can hopefully replicate the results and get the same level of rewards. So before I hop into all of that, as usual, I want to say thank you so much to my patrons for your support. It's truly appreciated. And from the bottom of my heart, I really, really, really do appreciate it. Okay, so let's look at these teams and characters. Before I fully jump into it, basically what I'm going to do, and I'll put timestamps and everything, I'm going to go over the characters you can use in the raid. I think we all pretty much know what these are. I'm going to go over which characters I myself am using and why, as well as why I think it is minimal investment. Spoiler alert, I'm only using one Ewok, and she's a requirement character. So, it's going to be pretty approachable in my opinion. And then I want to go over, I'm going to show you the actual raid runs that I do. So I'll put timestamps of everything below so you can kind of just hop to what you think is relevant. And you'll be able to see what I'm doing that way. So let's have a look here. So first of all, Vaughn is one of my patrons and has given me tons of permission here to use his guild's graphic, because graphics are not my forte. And this is what they are showing their guild. I'll just disappear here, as kind of like the minimal cost to go in with just 5 runs. So Leia solo, and then you have Piett and Han, Iden, Drogan, Scout, C-3PO, and then Jedi Knight Luke, Chewy, and Rex, which, by the way, you can actually break that up and do just Jedi Knight Luke and Rex. But the reason why this is such a good breakdown is twofold. One, you're getting to 9.8 to 10.4 million each with just 5 runs, which means you're hitting that 424 box, which is fantastic if everyone in your guild is doing this. But all of these characters are requirement characters. So obviously Leia is a Galactic Legend, but then you have Piett required for Executor, Han required for Jabba and Jedi Master Luke. Iden is just a solid character with a great ship, Imperial Trooper leader. And Imperial Troopers are just so strong, especially in this raid, but just everywhere else as well. Drogan, obviously required for Leia. Scout, required for Leia. C-3PO, required for Jabba, already at Relic 7. So a lot of these characters, if you have these other characters unlocked or ships unlocked, you've got them at Relic levels to use. And then obviously Jedi Knight Luke, required. He's a Galactic Legend requirement. Chewbacca is a Galactic Legend requirement at Relic 6, so you might want to bump him up a Relic level, and then Captain Rex required for Leia as well at Relic 7. So again, very straightforward in terms of characters that are already required. So I'm just going to show you here my score. I am getting with 8 runs, just over 14.5 million. If everyone in your guild gets 14 million, you will get the 700 million points, which means you are going to end up at the 665 box, which gets you these rewards here. Obviously, I'm not showing you the personal track. This is just the guild rewards. But to put this into perspective, let's just talk about the Mark III. You're going to be looking at, if you spend all 6,700 of that Mark III currency on impulse detectors, 25 impulse detectors a week. And it works out to be, if you're looking at Zimbittles, 54 or 55 Zimbittles a week. It is a good chunk of income. And like I said, if you're getting 14 million, if everyone in the guild is getting 14 million, you're going to be hitting 700 million points. So you're going to get this reward box. So let's go over the characters. I just took a really quick screenshot. This is my personal roster, so you can get an idea of what I'm using. Of the first 2 rows, I am using every single one of these characters, including Lando. So Admiral Ackbar is a requirement at Relic 3. So I did take him up a couple of levels, but he is a GL requirement. So I was I was comfortable doing that. He's a fleet commander as well. So again, comfortable doing that. C-3PO, I do have him at Relic 8. He is a requirement at Relic 7. I took him to Relic 8 when the cheese was still happening. And then Drogan, Rex, and Chewy, like mentioned, are all requirements as well. Han is a requirement. I bumped him up 1 relic level so I could run him with Piett. Hera is required at Relic 5 for Profundity, so I only had to take her up 2 relic levels, and she's actually really strong in this raid. I also had no problem adding a couple relic levels to her because she's also a fleet command or a fleet pilot, so I'm more comfortable doing it that way. And Phoenix has just been really strong recently that I'm okay making that team a little bit more durable, but do as you please. Jedi Knight Luke, we've already mentioned, was a requirement. Lando is a requirement at Relic 5 for Jedi Master Luke. So you're already going to have him there. And I use him on a specific team just as a body, which I will highlight when we get to that run. And then obviously Leia is the GL. Next set of requirements. I don't touch this first row at all. The Ewoks and Wedge, I don't use them. Ewoks are strong in the raid, but I don't want to invest in them any more than I have. So it's just an automatic skip. And then on the second row here, the only Ewok I'm using is Kneesa. She is required for Leia, so she's already at Relic 7 anyway. And then Piett, which again, we've already mentioned is a requirement for Executor. And the last set is just the remaining troopers. The only ones that I use are the ones at relic levels. Colonel Starck and General Veers, I had no problem adding extra relic levels to them because troopers are strong overall. And it looks like we're going to be breaking them up into 2 viable teams. So I wanted to be able to make 2 strong teams that way. Iden, as I mentioned before, she's got that ship. Gideon, I took to Relic 8. A lot of us have unlocked Robot Gideon from Conquest, and he wants an Imperial Remnant team. He wants Gideon on his team as well, so I had no problem doing that. Range, I took up to Relic 7, again for my trooper team, and Scout was required at Relic 7 for Leia. I took her to Relic 8. I did give her the Omicron. It's not going to be a do or die, in my opinion, to use her Omicron in this raid. I just did it because I did it right away. And then the rest of the troopers are Gear 12, so I'm not using them right now, but I am planning to relic them because we are getting that Imperial Remnant team up and running, and it's going to be worthwhile, in my opinion, to do that. So those are the characters. Pretty straightforward what I'm using. I want to show you the runs, though, so I'm going to apologize in advance because if you are getting motion sickness from this raid, I am going to do just all of my raid runs so that you can see them all. And then that will be it. And you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. All right, so let's start with the obvious one. If you have Leia, you're going to use her solo, and she does need specific modding to make this happen. So I'm going to show you her mods here really quickly. And then that way we can just go into the run and see the actual strategy. We're going to upgrade this one because why not? The key thing with Leia is that you want her to be over 540 speed. So mine's 542. She's got a speed set and a health set, sitting around 129,000 health. The more health, the better. You want 100% tenacity on your rebels because that is going to consume less evasion whenever they do successfully evade an attack. If you can get 192% crit damage on her, even better. And then you do want her over 6,000 offense, physical offense, because that will also take off more stacks of damage when she is attacking. Crit chance, I only got her to about 50. If you can get her higher, obviously better, but it didn't really make a huge difference to me personally. So I'll just show you really quick which mods I've got on here. That way you can have an idea of the secondaries I was looking at. It's a lot of health, a lot of offense, obviously a health circle. I did go with an offense cross, and then I went with a crit damage triangle. And then we've got her arrow up top. Crit avoid on her is pretty important as well. So make sure you have a crit avoid arrow on her. Okay. I have done this run 3 times. I've posted it 3 times as a solo, but I've done it repeatedly, just like practicing the solo successfully without actually posting it. And it has been extremely consistent in terms of the moves. So I do follow Scribe Gaming's strategy for everything. So wave 1, you're just alternating between the second special and basic on the troopers. And that's literally all you're going to do here in wave 1. I'm going to speed this up a little bit, and I'll link his guide below as well because he's got it done really well. So wave 2, now you're going to basic. You're only going to do the second special once, and then you just basic the other trooper to death. You're going to save the ultimate. That's the key thing with this. You can't really do it on auto. Wave 3, you use your ultimate. Wave 4, you are going to start on the commander, not the shadow trooper, and you're just going to basic the entire wave. And then same idea here on the shadow trooper. Once the commander's gone, just basic, save your ultimate, and then wave 5, you're going to use your ultimate. Wave 6 here is where you want at least 12 stacks of jam. You're going to basic the shadow, and then go and basic the commander. You're going to work on the commander, basic him, do the middle special, basic him 3 times, and then you're going to go back to the shadow trooper and work on him. And this is where I found Scribe's guide to be really reliable, is he actually alternates between all of the moves, going between the second and the first and the basic, and then you get into your last wave where you can do your ultimate and you get the whole thing there. So again, I am going to link his because credit where it's due, but I follow his specifically, and that gets it done every single time without fault. So 2.7. Okay, so then the next duo is pretty straightforward. Piett and Han is almost like married together. And on your troopers, so I do remod this team as well. You want them as fast as possible, all of the characters as fast as possible. And then if you can get to your physical offense being over 6,000 is ideal. And if you can get your crit chance to be over 78, the reason why you want over 78 is because you actually are increasing your chance to reduce cooldowns based off how much crit chance you have. And 75% is the threshold according to the raid mechanics. However, there is some kind of bug with the math going on, and you actually want it at 78. On your rebels, you want 100% tenacity because when they successfully evade an attack, that actually reduces how many stacks of evasion are disappearing from them. And you want more stacks of evasion on them because that directly correlates to how much damage your troopers are hitting for. And again, just as fast as possible. So Piett and Han are pretty much married for me. I always run them together. Han, again, you're going to want to take up to Relic 8. He's a Relic 7 requirement to do this. And I can typically get around 2 million with them. I know there are some guides that show you can get to up to 2.4. I usually land around 2.1. I'm going to speed this up though because it's super boring. So with Han, literally anytime you can use that evade, that far right special, you're going to do it. And same thing with Piett. You want to try to get as many stacks of evasion, which are those lovely little binoculars above Han's head, as high as possible, because that's going to affect how much damage Piett is doing. And then I like to kill the commander first in these waves just to make sure I'm getting fewer attacks sent my way. Once I get to about 46, usually it's in wave 3 here, I generally start only basicking with Piett so I can try and get rid of as many stacks of damage on the enemies as possible, unless for whatever reason I feel like he needs to heal a bit more. But I try to go back and forth between the troopers as well so that Han is getting, I'm not wasting anything. I don't want to use Piett on a trooper that has 12 stacks of damage when the other one has 100 and Piett's going to hit for 50 or 60 stacks. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And you can see here they're going to get 2.1. So I'm going to keep that. It's good enough for me and carry on. Okay, so Scout and C-3PO. Scout lead, believe it or not, even though she's not a leader, I don't remod these guys. I have found that when I remod them, I actually do worse. So I'm going to show you the general mods that I keep on Scout and C-3PO. These are on there all the time. Scout just kind of has whatever I threw at her. And it's honestly nothing special. You can even look at it on my .gg. Like I said, I don't remod them at all. and I do considerably better. C3PO obviously has slightly better mods on him because I do tend to use him a little bit more. So speed set, etc. He's got a ton of potency. He doesn't even have that tenacity threshold of 100%. He's sitting at 63%. And again, I find that this works way better than when I do remod, even trying to get him at 100% tenacity, all of that. It's been far more consistent for me personally. Now, I don't know how much of that is related to the fact that I have Scout's Omicron. So with Scout's Omicron, what's going to end up happening is she doesn't consume any stacks of evasion on herself whenever she's doing an attack. All of your other troopers, when they do an attack, consume the stacks of evasion on themselves. So what that means is I will always be building stacks of evasion as these runs go on. So Scout will progressively be hitting harder and harder. And she'll get to the point where she'll 1 or 2 shot these trooper characters. So it's the same idea with Scout and C3PO as it is with Piett and Han. You're just using that evasion special whenever you can. With C3PO and with her as well in the first few waves, trying to build up as much evasion as possible, which you can see here because of her Omicron. We're not even through wave 2 and we're almost at 60 stacks already between the two of them. We're over 60 stacks. So again, same idea. I try to use her to take a lot of the troopers all the way down to 0 if possible, or as close as possible. And then I make a mental note of how many stacks C3PO hits off. So with his basic, he can take 12 stacks off. And if he's able to kill someone instead of wasting Scout's basic on them, I will have him do it instead so that she can continue to knock off more stacks of damage on the other troopers. And honestly, that's the same strategy I pretty much use for all of the trooper runs that have a rebel on it, basically using them to build the evasion. The trooper does the big hit if possible, and then C3PO or whichever rebel is there will kind of play cleanup duty for me. So you can see that's why I go back and forth between the troopers so often, because I'm trying to really maximize how much damage I'm doing with them, so that I'm able to make it through in rage here. And then, of course, obviously, you don't get all the way through, but we get to over 2.4.5, which is pretty solid. Okay, so Iden and Drogan. Exact same idea. I do remod them. So again, going for lots of speed. We want that crit chance to be above 78% if possible. And if you can get the physical offense above 6,000, that will affect how many stacks of damage you're doing with your basic to start with. And then just going onto the rebel, you want that 100% tenacity so that you're consuming less stacks of evasion so that the trooper can still hit relatively hard. And again, 6,000 on your offense if possible. That is a number that I do tend to get a bit more lenient with as I kind of hit like the dregs, so to speak, of my roster. But for these guys, it's pretty easy to hit it, especially with the higher relic characters and the higher damage dealing characters in general. Okay, so exact same strategy. Drogan's going to build the stacks of evade with possible. I'm only going to basic with him. I'm going to go back and forth with him based off how much damage he's doing and how much damage is on the enemy troopers. And then Iden obviously building as much evasion as possible as well, and basicking with her to kind of knock them down, going back and forth based off who has the more stacks of damage. The one thing that I will say at the end when you hit enrage with these runs that you do want to be doing is trying to get one last evasion move in if possible. I'm not going to suggest that you try and like time it and you know, make it so that you can hit an evade if it comes down to saving your evasion move or killing a trooper. Obviously, you want to kill the trooper for more points. But when you're at enrage, you lose all stacks of evasion. So your trooper is no longer going to be hitting as hard as they were beforehand. So there's no point really in doing a basic with them. If you can, you would do the evasion move because that gives you more points towards your total score as well. And if you're not going to kill that trooper, again, there's no point wasting the basic if you have the evasion ability available to get more points that way. So here, Iden wants to use that evasion. We get more points. And then, you know, they are going to end up killing them. Like I'm not able to kill these troopers since we're out in rage, but we're getting over 2 million with them. So quite happy. Okay, so Gideon here is going to go with Gideon, Starck, and Kneesa. The reason why I throw Kneesa in here is because she also has evasion abilities in her kit for the raid. So why not just build more evasion if possible? And she's a body that stores evasion. She's not consuming it like the troopers are. So again, same idea with the troopers, making them as fast as possible. If you can get to that 6,000 threshold on physical offense, great. If you can get to 78% crit chance, that is really great. That's like that evasion mechanic there. Kneesa, I'm also going to put 100% tenacity on her because, again, we want her to keep as much evasion on her as possible because the troopers are doing their damage based off the total evasion stacks of everyone on the team, not just themselves. So that's why I like to stick Kneesa here. She's going to be able to hold on to those evasion stacks even with the troopers consuming them based off their attacks here. So everyone here has an evasion ability. Kneesa's looks slightly different. They are slightly different. She's building evasion on herself mostly. But the really great thing with Kneesa's evasion abilities, both of her specials, give evasion onto herself, and they also give you points when you do them. So she's able to kind of contribute a little bit in that regard. And again, she's a body here for evasion. So because Starck and Gideon are both building stacks of evasion with their special, she's gaining those evasion stacks and they're not being consumed. So they're able to utilize that. Even though they're consuming the stacks on themselves, they're still hitting really hard because you can see here, Kneesa's already at 75 stacks. So they're utilizing that and able to just, hit hard and punch out that way. So again, you can see I go back and forth because I don't want to waste the stacks on them if I don't have to. And then again, at the end, trying to just get as many evasion points as possible. And they're able to get over 1.7 that way. And they're all, other than Gideon and Starck, requirement characters. So it's a good way to go. Okay, Hera, Chewy, and range. So Chewy here does not have an evasion ability. He is here solely as a body. Hera is really strong in the raid, and then range obviously is our trooper that's going to be hitting really hard. So Hera and Chewy are modded the same, as close. If you can get over 6,000 physical offense, I definitely would do it, but you definitely want the 100% tenacity again as fast as possible, and then 78% crit chance if possible. And I'm actually going to change her cross to have a tenacity cross on there. I don't know why Hot Utils didn't put one on, but it didn't. And then that way we can get her as close to 100% tenacity as possible for that. And doesn't really affect the other stats too much, that I'm okay making that change, and we'll be good to go that way. Okay, so let's just have a look at Chewy and range, and then we can hop into this. So same idea, Chewy doesn't have evasion here on his abilities in the raid. So he is there as a body. He's going to be storing evasion on him because he's not consuming it. And all I want to do with Chewy in this is basic. I don't want to use his jam abilities because I don't want to get weaker enemies since they're worth fewer points. So he's just going to store the evasion so that ranged trooper can keep hitting relatively hard, and just basic and kind of play cleanup duty. And that way range, again, can go and focus on whoever has more stacks of damage since he's going to be hitting harder, because Hera also isn't consuming those stacks of evade. So again, with Hera, you want to be doing her specials. They both add evasion and they both give you points. It's a similar idea to as Princess Kneesa. Only basicing with Chewy, please keep that in mind. So it is a little bit of kind of needing to pay attention to who's doing what and whose turn it is. And then with range, we want to be building those stacks of evasion and then basicing with him and keeping in mind that you want to go with him to whoever has a higher damage number to knock them down more. Again, he is consuming the evasion on himself. So once Hera and Chewy get to around 60 stacks of evasion, you can see here they're already over 80 combined. Range can now just start focusing on basicing if possible. And then that way we can just sort of knock our way down with these these characters as quickly as possible, getting them out of the way so that we can just focus on getting the points and getting range to do kind of all of the heavy lifting for us. And then again, at the end, once you've hit in range here and you've lost all of your stacks of evasion, you might as well just hit the evasion ability if you have it to get the more points that way. So those 3 are getting over 1.5 million. Okay, Jedi Knight Luke and Rex. This is the one that I'm pretty sure I play wrong. I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be totally honest with you. But since they're already relic, they're already requirement characters, I'm going to use them anyway. It's a little bit annoying because I don't love their abilities, to be honest, in the raid. They're not that awesome. So I'm just going to make them as fast as possible. Stick that tenacity number on them of 100%. If we can get over 6,000 offense, great. Again, it's a number that I start to get a little bit more lenient with as we get closer in. But because they don't really do anything, like they don't have stacks of evasion, they're just doing basics and jam. There's no point putting a trooper with them, in my opinion, because they're not really adding any value to that trooper. It is a waste, which is why I put them together, because if they're going to be a waste, then they might as well be wasted together. So again, I'm pretty sure I do this wrong. I alternate between basicing and the second special, which gives you jam. Because we're jamming ourselves, we're going to get weaker characters, so we're going to have fewer points racked up before we get to enrage. I could see something like an auto basic working better, where you're just getting the harder enemies to deal with anyway, and basic with them actually ends up healing them as well, so you're able to kind of survive a little bit longer that way. But again, since they're relics and I don't want to waste them with a trooper, I'm going to put them together and get to 1 million if I can with them, and call that good, because that's just going to get me over the threshold of that score that I want, that minimum score, and we'll be okay. But again, because I'm jamming myself, I'm getting weaker enemies, which means I'm getting fewer points. They are faster to kill, which is great since they have lower stacks of damage on them when they come out, but they're giving me fewer points when I do kill them. The reason why I was using the special is because it does damage to both of the enemies at the same time. So I was kind of hoping to just get rid of them as quickly as possible and make my way through here, as you can see. And we're already at enrage, so we are pretty much screwed. You can't kill anybody, but you get over 1 million. I keep it personally and call it good. Okay, so Veers, Ackbar, Lando. This is like kind of this hodgepodge team that I put together. Veers does not have any ability to generate evasion for himself. So he can take advantage of people that have evasion and hit really hard, but he can't generate it. So you need to put him with someone who can. Again, exact same modding. So as fast as possible, going for 78% crit chance. If you can get over 6,000 physical offense, great. If you can get to 100% tenacity on the rebels, also great, because you want them to keep those stacks of evasion. Admiral Ackbar is really good in the raid as well with his abilities, because he can heal. He has that hasty repairs special. He's generating evasion. And then Lando here is a warm body. He's going to hold on to the evasion for us. And that way Veers can keep hitting as hard as possible. In this situation, Veers is just basicing. You don't want to use his special at all. All he's going to do is basic and pop off the enemies if possible. So let's hop in and have a look here. I have tried this with Ackbar lead and I didn't like it. I didn't find it to be as successful as using Veers lead with these particular characters. But do as you please. If you can make it work better, by all means. So with Ackbar, I'm going to alternate between his two specials if possible, because they're going to heal, they're going to give us evasion, and then that way Veers can start hitting harder as much as possible. With Lando, you can actually use his special as well, because that generates evade. So either way with him, you're going to be good. And then it's the same idea with Veers. I'm going back and forth between the enemy troopers and hitting whoever has more damage on them, and using the rebels if they have to do a basic to kind of clean up. But I'm relying on Veers to do all of the heavy lifting for me, so that we can get as far as possible and get as many points as possible. So again, it's not super awesome because Veers can't generate any evasion for himself, but we are able to make it to Enrage, and we can get over 1,000,000 points with 3 leftover characters this way. Okay, so that's everything. Like I said, I'm not going to call it a guide. I'm not calling this a guide at all. It's more of a walkthrough, a playthrough sort of thing of what I'm doing. If you are getting better scores than I am with these teams, amazing, go for it. But this is just what I did really, really quickly, and I wanted to show it because, in my opinion, it is minimal investment, and you're going to get a lot of rewards back. We do know CG said this raid is going to have an 8 to 9 month shelf life. It launched at the beginning, roughly the beginning of November, so we should be seeing it until July or August-ish of next year, theoretically. Beginning of July, beginning to the beginning of August. So I would definitely consider investing over the next couple of months in some of these characters to bump your score as high as possible. And then that way you can reap the rewards back and then invest in your roster elsewhere, because these rewards pay out so nicely and you are able to gear the rest of your roster really quickly with it. So don't sleep on it. And the requirements are really, honestly, player friendly. They're all pretty good. So that's it. Hopefully this was helpful and you've got some ideas now on what you can do with your roster, modding, etc. And I would love to know if you are doing better. That's fantastic. But I would love to know if this was helpful. I would love to know if you're able to replicate it and get there. And yeah, so that's it. Hopefully this was helpful, guys, and enjoy the raid.